You're listening to Portals Podcast, an extension of the Emergence Creative Space. With Portals Podcast, listeners are transported into the hearts and minds of some of the most inspired creators, producers, artists, and activists around. This is a platform that acts as a spotlight on people, organizations, businesses, and more who are the unsung heroes making a huge impact on the lives of others. My name is Scott Love, and I'll be your host on this journey into the powerful world of intention and conscious creation. I'm an activist, an entrepreneur, and a visionary. Over the years, I've made some incredible relationships with a lot of truly epic people. Many have helped inspire me and have guided me on my journey. I believe they'll inspire you as well. Here's what's up. We are a people in transition. The choices we make now will affect lives for generations to come. Our choices will be our legacy. I want Portals Podcast to be a go-to resource for those searching for solutions. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. All right, let's get inspired. All right, I am super excited. This is the very first special guest intro I've ever done for Portals Podcast. Yay! All right, our first guest is an amazing woman from Florida. She is the head of kidsneedboth.org, which is a parental rights and parenting advocacy group that helps establish norms for children and families that are suffering from trauma of either traumatic situations or divorce or any number of situations that they may find themselves in front of the courts for. She's an advocacy program for the courts as well. So she helps create programs that parents can follow to help be better parents and serve the children. I know Danica because for years she has been a facilitator at the 3 Days of Light gathering, helping teach and guide our participants on how to be better parents, how to develop relationships with our children, how to get involved and become productive, conscious, upright people who, have a bigger goal than just survival in mind. So with all this said, I'd like to thank Danica Joan for being here, and I appreciate you. All right, a little disclaimer here. Because this is our first podcast, I kind of messed up and didn't do the intro to Danica prior to recording the actual interview. So please bear with me. I apologize. So we're going to jump straight into the conversation that Danica and I had. I hope you like it, enjoy, and thank you for coming to check out the first ever Emergence Creative Spaces Portals podcast. Bless. Thank you so much, Danica, for being here. I really appreciate it. I know that you're really busy and have a lot of stuff going on. So the conversation about kids going back to school and how that impacts the lives of everybody in the household, everybody in the community, actually, really brings up a lot of tender issues that we really need to address. COVID has taught us a lot of things, but one of the most obvious is just how our systems need an overhaul. It's really important to me that we take this opportunity to create a better world, a better place to live. But there's a lot of challenges involved with that. So what do you feel is the most important as far as getting kids back in school and some type of, is there going to be a normalcy? Is anything ever going to be the same? Probably not, but what are your thoughts?
I really think it's very important that the children have some contact, some semblance of normal in the schools. What do the schools provide as far as a lot of times their intervention? A lot of times they're in an intervention with families that are dysfunctional, that have to deal with abuse and neglect, or food insecurity. A lot of times schools are that safety net for children
Right,
to make
right.
sure that I know in Michigan they do it. I know in Florida we do it, where there's organizations that send food home for the weekend. And having worked in the projects, it was a huge thing, because these kids would go to school on Friday and they were just really squirrely. And I was told that it's because they're really not sure how they're going to get fed until Monday.
Oh, wow.
So schools are definitely needed. Now, how do you navigate in the midst of a pandemic? That requires some creativity. That I think that you can have real life school. I don't think um, I think it would be foolish for us to think that the children can just be self-directed doing some virtual school. Like in Florida, we have Florida Virtual School, and it's all self-directed for the most part. And kids are not, then that puts such a burden on the parent. So now the parent is having to be the teacher. They're having to be the one, at least the they have to be the disciplinarian that makes sure that the child does what they're supposed to do. And maybe it's in a single parent household where the parent is like, wow, I know my child needs an education, but if I'm here be acting as the teacher, I can't make money for the family. I mean,
Right.
there's so many dynamics that to take into consideration. So it's not just we've got to get these kids up and off to school because we need a babysitter. We need to get
Right.
the economy going. It's
Eh,
such a complex conversation.
I've been listening to a couple different sources as far as different ideas experimenting with. One is very similar to what we're doing now, and that is the Zoom schools, where they put these kids in basically cubicles. They sit with the camera, and then the teachers just rotate as if like we're doing a Zoom class now, and then the next one would be the science teacher, and then the one after that would be, and so they're sitting there, and that's kind of weird where they're not getting any real school. So they might as well just be at home in their bedroom watching it. Another idea that they had was AB school days, where they alternate school days, where they're going to school, but they're not. There's not 2,000 kids in the school at one time.
Mhm.
They had this idea of like cluster groups, where you get in with this cluster group of like maybe 10 people, and that is your little posse for the entire school year, which is kind of weird. They're calling that cohorts. Selective returns. Now this one kind of freaked me out a little bit, and this was selective returns, which was the school would select students can and which students can't come back to school. So automatically, it's like, oh my god, kids who have felt like they didn't belong before, now they're not good enough to go to school. That one kind of freaked me out. There's this idea that I thought was kind of neat, and that is choosing like one course at a time, to where the students would they'd have 3 to 4 weeks of math and that's it, and then 3 to 4 weeks of science and that's it, and then 3 to 4 weeks of English and that's it. And I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. It's like a concentrate. It's almost like college, like a concentrated class on these different subjects. And then it's tied in with that, though, is they also had this idea of project activity schooling. Are you familiar with that idea? So,
No.
so basically, it's like we say, okay, we are going to create a functional business. The group, like this group, acts as if they're the business owners, and they strategically plan this business from seed to their first customer, and they work it out, and they're learning all the math, they're learning all the communication skills, they're learning all the tele skills or the computer skills, so that they're learning a whole bunch of different things. And then what they're doing is they're, instead of, so they'd go like 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks with this, we're going to start a general store. And then next week is, okay, we're going to start a architect company. And the next one is, okay, we're going to do a music festival. And so they just learn all the different skills that are needed for those situations. I kind of like that idea. Individual learning plans, that's kind of interesting, where they have all the choices in front of the students, and they say, okay, listen, man, you can do the Zoom classes, or you can do this AB schooling, or you can do this, but you get to choose your learning path for the next year. And then they follow through and get to choose their own thing. The last one, and I'm surprised they didn't include homeschooling in this, but they're calling it distance learning,
Mhm.
where basically, I guess it is homeschooling, but it's not really homeschooling because the parents are not interacting, you know?
That's right. It's distance learning is probably what they're talking about is more of a self-directed where it's
Mhm.
not live. Um, and that I don't see that being very effective. It could be effective with maybe the top 10% of students that don't really need to be monitored anyway. That may be very effective. I know that I'm definitely a proponent of doing things sequentially because I think that when a child has multiple, uh, classes, it causes them to want to focus on the ones that they like and then neglect the ones that they don't. And I don't think that many people are designed to really effectively multitask. And that's pretty much what we've forced our kids to do, especially like when they
Right.
get into middle school and high school, they're juggling multiple classes. Um, I found just, I went and I got my college degree in an online platform where each class you took things sequentially 5 weeks of this class and you're done and then you go to the next one. I found that that's a way better way of really absorbing the content than just sprinkling it in and throughout the week. I think that
Right.
I do think I like the idea of if you're going to be choose for your child to be in person in the classroom, I think that there has to be a contract written up that says, okay, your child is allowed to come into the classroom, but on the contingency that you're going to follow certain guidelines that make sure that your child is interacting with is not a high risk of
Right.
getting spreading COVID. Now you can also have it where the teacher can do a blended classroom where they do have students on Zoom and class students in the classroom at the same time. That could actually lend itself outside of the pandemic with a child who, for whatever reason, can't be in the classroom, but yet they can still they can participate remotely in the classroom.
Yeah. Talking about like looking past COVID, I see this as an opportunity. It's I know a lot of people do. Whether we make the most of it or not, we'll see. But this is a great opportunity to figure out how to completely restructure the education system for kids. For the last 25 years, it's been nothing but memorization and testing.
Mhm.
I've read that as much as 80% of the elective classes from when I was in high school don't exist anymore. There is no wood shop. There is no metal shop. There is no, there's different bands, but it's like, and for me, that's the stuff that made school interesting. I enjoyed interacting with my friends. This is a kind of an interesting time. Everything is being shifted, not
Yeah,
just schools.
it does allow us all to kind of, it's like everything is brought to a screeching halt and you have to figure out, well, okay, what do I do now? Several of my kids are completely out of work since March because they're in the audiovisual business, and
Right.
conventions are not happening and they've had to reevaluate and there's been some good stuff come from it.
Hmm.
And one of them has a baby that's about a year old, and he found himself to be a stay-at-home dad.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, he was working like 80 hours a week, and he was, they were hiring somebody to take care of the baby and stuff like that. Now he's having to he is learning to bond and be patient
And that
and
will make a huge difference later on. Later on.
yeah, yeah, it's good. You really have, the thing is if you resist what's happening, it's only gonna, it had, it's not gonna help matters. It's not gonna help your experience of something when you resist it, especially when you can't do anything about it. Like here in Florida, masks are required um, anywhere in public, like indoors in public.
Right.
Um, and I could go around and just refuse to go out to go to places, but that's on me. So one of the things I wanted to address, why is it that people are so polarized about the masks? And I'm really clear that it's an identity thing. We're in a selfie society where you cover up half of a person's face, and that's what the bank robbers did. They covered their faces so that
Right.
they're to hide their identity. And I really think it's more of it's very confronting for people to be anonymous. I'm
Right.
making it worse on myself. And same with this, going back to the schools, this is an opportunity. This is not a problem. This is like, think about all the people who have for years been very successful at homeschooling. Well, what were they doing that made it so successful? And you touched on it, is making it a project driven environment where you've got multifacets, and within that project you're learning math and science and reading and all these things.
Right. So what if, this is what if, and this is all we have to go on at this point. Okay, so the issue is that people aren't able to work. Parents don't necessarily have the resources for those that are working, to sit and educate their children. Schools are spending, what is it, anywhere between $6,000 and $8,000 per student per year, which is not a lot of money, but parents can use that money to structure their lives to where, okay, I know that between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock and noon, that is the school day for my kid. That is my job for the day. That is my job for the day. And I do that 3 days a week. And now it becomes, is not much less of a burden at that point. That way the parents can actually play the role of teacher. They can buy the programs they need. They can upgrade the computers for their kids. They can afford to put the children in different programs outside of the house. So if the big question is kids is not going to be social, well, this is a whole new market. Maybe we can create activity groups for kids, where we happen to know that everyone in this group has been tested. They just got their test back. So yeah, now we're all going to go do this field trip of camping for the week, and then that camp. And then another idea I had, coming from a summer camp background, is what if they converted, because these summer camps don't have anything going on in the wintertime, what if they brought kids together, and where 8 to 10 of them were staying in a cabin at a time, and then they rotated their classrooms the same way kids rotate going to activity programs at summer camp. Instead of going to sports and rec, they're going to math. Instead of going to arts and crafts, they're going to science. Instead of going to waterfront, they're going to reading and writing.
That would be fun. Man, that would be summer camp learning. I mean, yeah, because you're not necessarily, if you're going off to a camp, you're going to be pretty much in a bubble and not mingling with the community and stuff like that. And it would actually be seen as fun.
So yeah, that's different ideas. What kinds of things are you seeing or hearing on the ground through your program?
With my program, right now what we're doing is we've shifted. Like we were going to be doing a conference in the spring, and it got shifted to an online platform. And since then, my team now we're creating an educational social media platform for families, mostly high conflict families that are looking to be self-empowered in dealing with, custody situations and stuff like that. And all, some of it also has to do with, how do I reach out? How do I reconnect with my child who, is in, is acting out and stuff like
Right.
that. And also empowering the professionals, because a lot of times the professionals who are trying to do the good work of building, of healing families and restoring families, they don't necessarily know how to market themselves. So we're trying to match the two of them together to empower, self-empower, and take it out of the hands of the people who are getting rich.
Are you seeing an upsurge the numbers of conflicts that are taking place at home?
Yeah,
Is there? Yeah.
yeah, because well, first of all, just with the intact families, you're dealing, it's like a pressure cooker. If it's a dysfunctional family, try putting them inside and making them stay there with each other, and it becomes, domestic violence is on the rise within the families. That's
Yes.
another thing that if that gets overlooked. If the child is totally sequestered in the home, and at least when they go to school, a lot of those dysfunctions can surface.
And
But
going to school is almost a release. It's almost like they look for a lot of times they look forward to going to school because they don't have the domineering father figure or the mom who's freaking out on them.
um, you know, here's the other thing, that if parents are not, a lot of times the financial burden, it comes bearing down on the family, and that can be a trigger for violence in the home. And the kids, if the parent's not able to bring money in for the family, the kids are not going to be able to do virtual school or Zoom, because they probably don't, the internet gets cut off because it's not essential. you
Right.
know um, there's just so many things, that could be, the child could be put in harm's way by completely saying, this is how you do it. And I think at the beginning of COVID, like, in March, people were just saying, just stay at home, just stay at home. And I said, that's great. And if that's what, if that's your happy place, that's great. But for some people, it is seriously a mental health issue if they don't get out, because staying inside alone with their thoughts could lead them to suicidal thoughts.
Right. And there's a rise in suicides as well.
Mhm.
And coincide with this, it's really a perfect storm of these suicide prevention hotlines and these resources for these students and for parents, the places where they can seek help. They're also needing support because they're also affected by COVID. So they have less people answering phone calls and they have less people showing up to help around the office administrative. So it's like everything is a slow trickle right now. A friend of mine told me that they called for another friend, called the suicide prevention hotline to try and get some resources, and it took them 4 times to get through. And then when they got through, they were given a list of numbers, but half the numbers on that list were no longer in service.
Hmm.
So it's like they were given, and it was like, due to COVID-19, our offices are shut down, kind of a thing. So who do these children go to? Who do these parents go to? And that's the question.
They don't have, if you've been like an independent contractor, you don't necessarily qualify for unemployment, all of those benefits and stuff like that. And I tell you what, it just, you can tell how some of these people that get on the news have no clue what it's like to live in other people's worlds. Meaning that they're like, well, if you have symptoms, go see your doctor. I don't know about you, but it's been years since I actually, the other day, I decided that I should probably go and get a full checkup and stuff like that. And my doctor was like, oh, yeah, well, that's going to be $400 for your first appointment. And
Crazy. Yeah.
I'm just like, are you kidding? So the suggestion by the media or whatever that to, if you have symptoms, go see your doctor. Well, yeah, in your world that would work, but not for a lot of us.
Right.
We're out of work, $400 just to find out that we have something that's a common cold and not COVID. It's that could be the difference between keeping our lights on or
Right.
food.
Or again, $400 you can get a laptop so your
Mhm.
kid can go to school. It's interesting.
We just in the last couple of weeks in our neighborhood, cars were being broken into. Two cars were stolen, and that's anytime unemployment goes up, crime goes up.
Desperate people do desperate things, man. If
Mm-hmm.
you got to eat, then you're going to take it.
Yep.
And then that's sad reality. It's and it comes to, now we're getting a little off subject, but it goes to big picture lack of preparedness. It comes to, and again, this goes hand in hand with the masks and all the conspiracy theories that are going around in the United States, and the recent surge, our surge, while other countries are seeing a diminish in the amount of cases, is that, actually a country of spoiled little brats. Let's say,
Yeah.
we're codependent on our government in such ridiculous ways. Seriously, we can't even take care of our children unless there are programs in place to support us. And that's a reality that a lot of people are waking up to, and they're freaking out. The point is that this is a good opportunity for us to, restate our independence and find solutions. What are some solutions that you see in the near term? I mean, we're talking about like programs that can probably take effect in, if we need to, in a month, which is when schools are supposed to start, if not sooner. Something that parents can do right now to help their children and help themselves stay sane and also educate.
Wow. I think it's very important that if there are for your own mental health and your child's, get outside. Not, don't congregate with a bunch of people. Obviously, be responsible, but get outside and get some physical activity with you and your child, and instead of staying cooped up playing video games. That's probably like the worst thing for kids and parents for their mental health, is just to zone out on TV. And be proactive about what would be a solution, and talk to your school boards, communicate with them, and say, and to give them some ideas, because they're looking for the ideas, they're looking for workable solutions. Yeah, most of these people that are on the school board, they've already raised their children, so they don't get what it's really like to be in the shoes of a parent.
Yeah, they're not feeling the desperation right now. They're
Mhm.
observing what's happening. Mm.
So, and to communicate with the successful homeschoolers what's worked for them, and how to just lay out the problems and where the gaps are and stuff like that, but to definitely be proactive, and to not resist what's so. I mean, a lot of times you get caught in this survival, that mentality, and you just can't think, because you're living in a what if world of, oh my gosh, what if this and what if that. That does not serve you at all. Yeah, I don't think it's a simple solution. I think it's something that has to have multiple solutions that are viable. No longer, I don't think, even before COVID, I don't think that there was a cookie cutter solution. I know here in Central Florida, even our schools, we tried different models of schools, and then of course, some were on a rotating basis, which was kind of cool, because the kids every few weeks got like 2 weeks off, but they also got stuck having to take a portion of learning in the summertime.
Right.
But it allowed for more people, more students to flow through one particular school than they could have if they did it on, a 9 months kind of schedule. So
Have you looked into homeschooling at all in the past?
I have. I think that if done right, it can be an amazing opportunity, because the thing I know about it is when you take your child on a field trip, you check the blocks. I mean, just like a teacher would,
Right.
they have certain things that they have to teach children in certain categories. And same with the homeschooler. They're like, okay, well, we're going to take you to, this botanical garden, and these are the things that I can say that you learned. And
Right.
it's very much like what you were talking about, like a blended curriculum where it's project based.
That's very good. I know that there's a lot of homeschooling websites, and I will look some up and post some in the description of this podcast, websites that are resources for parents that are interested in homeschooling their kids. I know there's homeschooling groups where clusters of parents are getting together and working on curriculum together and sharing resources, and in some cases meeting up and doing projects together. A couple of the resources that I've come up with that are not related to homeschooling are actually more geared towards teachers. But my thought is that if parents learn to think like teachers, there's a role that takes place. Like if you're getting ready to go to church on Sunday, you get dressed up and you say your prayers and you hope that God's listening. Yeah, so you shift your role from being outside of church to inside of church. Well, stepping into the role of teacher, you have to think like a teacher, and you have to maybe spend a little bit of time understanding, that me being your mom right now, or me being your father right now, might be a different role than, you're not used to me being your teacher. Long and short of it is, there's a couple of resources that I found out that I'm going to look at and I'm going to share with you here. One is myviewboard.com/distance learning. And these are, you can go there and just learn different tips, different suggestions, different resources for distance. You hear what other people are talking about when it comes to distance learning. And the other one is powerschools.com/time for teachers. And it's giving information to people who want to be teachers for their kids. And so I think those are pretty cool resources.
I can imagine, and it's probably in some model of homeschooling where there is like a master teacher that teaches the students, and then maybe you're co-teaching. If it can be like a co-teaching relationship between the master teacher and the parents, where they have a connection, with each other. And I think that could definitely be, as it should be actually, because it's interesting. Private schools are different than public schools from the perspective of private schools highly depend on parent involvement to
Okay.
co-educate the child. Public schools, on the other hand, they get to know a parent. It's usually not for a good reason.
Right. Right.
Um,
So almost like a situation where they could Monday morning or evening or whatever at a certain time, the parents and the teachers do the Zoom call, and the teachers actually teach the parents how to be better teachers and say, okay, this is the curriculum for the week. This is some suggestions. This is where you can find your resources. All of this is going to be in the email that I'm sending you. At the end of the week, we can talk about, what worked and what didn't work.
I like that. I think that starts bringing things more personal, and the parent does need to take ownership of their child's education. not just throw it on the teachers.
Right. Then there's the segment of the population that they themselves are uneducated. They don't really see the value of school, and they are struggling. You know, they're not healthy lifestyles. They're early pregnancies and separated families, and there's a whole segment of the population, and it's fairly large, that, I'm just going to let my kids run, whatever. They can do what they want to do. They can make it up later. I didn't need an education. And that's the thing. I didn't need school, and not really seeing outside their own bubble that their life is not really all that great, that they're having some sadness, some issues going on. How do we connect for those kids? Is that just they come later? I don't know. It's this is the part that's really frustrating, because I grew up in a low income household, and different projects, moved around a lot. My life was very chaotic as a child. School was a place of escape for me, but I'd also get into a lot of trouble at school. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so we're talking and having these conversations about the mass population. What about those that are really at risk? Those are
So
the ones that my heart hurts for.
yeah, and I started out, my first elementary teaching job was in the projects in Tampa. Yeah, it was really sad. I mean, we were pretty much surviving. We were a failing school, and these children did not value education. They were and when we would do those standardized tests, they were Christmas treeing everything. And I gotta say, I wonder how many people really ended up going into adulthood not even being able to read. I don't know how to serve that population, because it's like, where do you begin? Because it's a mentality. It's a mentality that I remember when we would have this group of people, what was it? Like a career day, you'd always have the resource officer that would come and hand out the little plastic badges to the kids. I'm telling you, these kids, they wanted nothing to do with the law, the police officer, because their only view of a police officer was one that came at 2 a.m. to drag one of their family members off to jail.
Yeah, that's sad.
And it
Yep.
was just, it's a mentality. It's a whole different thing to tackle when you're dealing with families that don't see the value in education.
Right.
And that's where maybe you do a project based, where you're like, okay, well, I know this demographic, most of them are tradesmen. How can we make our education relevant to them and their families? Because these parents don't see the value of becoming an accountant or or a doctor or whatever. It's not even attainable, not even in the realm of what's possible. But to become a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician, now that might speak to them.
Right. And then there's a lot of children that are so young that a career isn't even, they don't even understand the concept of a career. They thinking about Kool-Aid and whatever, candy bars and playing out in the park, or if they play out in the park. It's that's the part that's really, really getting to me.
Interesting. Years ago, when the school sent us to training on how to serve the poverty class, and it's a distinct mentality of between the poverty class, the middle class, and the wealthy class. The poverty classes are typically concrete thinkers. Like, money is meant to be spent. It's not meant to be conserved or leveraged or anything like that. Like, money, and their most valuable possession are their relationships. That's one of the reasons that a lot of times in the poverty class, they are afraid for one of their own to rise up and go off to college, because that means a loss of a relationship that, and that's the most valuable thing they have.
Right.
They're typically very generous, and if I leave my bike in the yard, it's not stealing for the neighborhood kid to go and grab it. and go ride it and leave it in another yard and stuff. It's amazing.
Right.
But teachers who are typically middle class need to understand the mentality of the population they serve.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and then there's a whole shame factor too for anybody who wants to succeed. It's a complex subject. It's I understand why there's not there's no blanket solution to it. And the tendency I imagine is for people to just not think about it. It's like people don't like to think about things that aren't easy fixes, which is one of the things that attracted me to this conversation with you. I was going to give you the floor for a couple seconds to talk about what's inspiring you in this moment. Maybe give some shout outs to upcoming projects or people that are doing good work.
Well, I tell you, what I'm really enjoying seeing is the creativity, people thinking outside of the box. They're no longer, we can't necessarily fit in the way that it's always been done. And I don't think it should be. So I'm finding people like just now, just teachers discovering Zoom. Zoom's been around forever, but they're just out of sheer need. People are joining. I've yeah, just from sheer need, people are becoming resourceful in trying to fill those needs. And these are things that probably there were a lot of needs that were never filled, but people are like, well, this works for us right now. And they weren't recognizing the needs, but now it's in everybody's faces. So
Thank you so much,
okay.
Danica. I appreciate you. And I know we got some good stuff here. Are you available anytime in the next few days to maybe bring this back in?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got I today just happens to be like a jam-packed day, but I'm tomorrow, probably towards tomorrow, Thursday. Yeah, the next 2 days for sure.
All right, excellent. Well, let me cut this up, edit it, see what I come up with. I'll send you some of it, and let's no, why put it off? Let's set a time for tomorrow. Send me a message when a good time would be for you. And
All
this
right.
time I'll make sure that the video's set up and that it's working. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to troubleshoot it and find out why it's doing that thing. But very good. Thank you so
No problem.
much.
All right. It was good talking to you.
Yes, ma'am. Have fun. Bye. And so it is. Our first podcast is in the bag. This has been a long time coming, and I feel a lot of gratitude for all the pieces that came together so well to make this happen. A huge shout out to the Emergence Creative Space contributing members and Patreons. Without your support, this would not be possible. And wow, thank you so much for sharing this moment with us. This feels great. It's amazing to connect with those that are doing the work, And Danica definitely qualifies as one of the people who are doing the good work. If you like this podcast, then be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you can think of anyone else who would enjoy this content, please share it. Help us get the word out about Portal's podcast. If you like what we're doing with Emergence Creative Space, consider becoming a patron and supporting our mission. There are a number of options to choose from, and each one comes with a list of amazing perks that will grow as we grow. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com, that's patreon.com/Emergence Creative Space. You can also find everything we do on emergencecreativespace.com. Thanks again for being here. Have a great day. Be safe and be kind to one another. Have a good day.